gentlemen, welcome back to the Strawberry Hill Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Simmons, and we were here at the Shop Cigar Lounge. If you haven't been here, you need to come down and check it out. Before we get started, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and check us out. If you're not following us, please do on YouTube. We're on YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Follow us. Today, we have a special guest, and she lives in my neighborhood, actually.
Yes.
She's a neighbor of mine. We have Candice Fabry.
Nailed it.
Yes, I got it. I've been working on this for a while. I've been literally working on this for like 2 days. Like, how do I say her last name?
You did it better than most announcers.
Right. Well, that's because I had to ask you.
Yeah, that's usually helpful.
Yeah, welcome in.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
This place is amazing. I've seen the pictures online, but it does not do any justice to actually sitting here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, and the smell, I said, like, this is one of those smells that, not a cigar smoker, but that smell has just always been something enjoyable. So, no, this is amazing.
One of these times, you have to come down and
I'm going to have to get some lessons to it.
Yeah, we have a Cigar 101 class.
That's awesome.
So if you ever want to legit, like, come down. And then we have a cocktail class, too. And so if you want to learn how to make cocktails, we had one this last week. We did old fashions and Manhattans and stuff like that.
My mom's a big old fashioned lady.
And then we have live music on the weekends. I know we're like talking about me right now.
No, it's awesome though. But I think that's the thing is like these different experiences. I think probably out of COVID, everyone's looking for something to experience that is even a little bit different than pre-COVID, I think. And this is just one of those spaces where you can come in and just be chill. Because I feel like in everything else I have to do, I have to be just so like,
art of chill. That's what this is about.
This is perfect for art of chill. I love it. I love it.
Appreciate
it's so cool.
that.
Yeah.
All right. So enough about me. So let's get into you. All right. Okay. Timeout. Yeah.
Do we have to start all over?
No. Is it this?
Yeah. Hold it. I was literally about to ask you. I was like, that's got to be loud because I can hear it.
When you said it, as soon as you were like, I hear, I was like, ooh, that's the one. But I didn't hear it.
All right. You ended with, let's get into
All right. All right. Better?
Good.
Can you hear this one? No. All right. Back at it. So let's get into you. So you are the women's soccer coach at Ottawa, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So how long have you been doing that?
I got hired in February 22. So we're 2 full fall seasons because we come in and we're right, just like football, we're right into season when we get there. So.
And so did you've been in Ottawa, like, were you an assistant coach before that, or you just kind of jump right into it?
I jumped into a head coaching role in college. I had coached college for a season right out of college, and that's a whole nother story. And then went into the youth game. And then when I got to Kansas City, I was coaching amateur women's teams in the summer. And I got actually a message from Katie Sowers, who was the assistant for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't know Katie, but I've heard of her.
So her sister Liz and now Katie's actually the Italian women's flag football coach for the Olympics coming up.
How cool.
Yeah, so Katie and Liz are the flag football coaches who have won 3 national championships at Ottawa. And I didn't know much about flag football.
There's a flag football at Ottawa too?
Flag football women's at Ottawa, and they are insanely good. What? These women are amazing athletes. They are getting the NIL deals out of NAIA that I've not seen anywhere. But the Sowers twins. So Katie slides into my DM and I'm like, why is Katie Sowers messaging me? So a little bit of a freak out moment of like, you have a Microsoft Surface commercial.
Yeah.
You were in the Super Bowl. Like, why are you messaging me? So, hey, whatever. Ottawa's looking for a head coach. They haven't had a lot of luck. Would you be interested? And I was like, well, one, you're cool. So sure, I'll take at least a call and see what's going on. And got on campus, really enjoyed the AD, really enjoyed just like the campus itself. I think it's like this cool little small town, but it's an hour drive from where we live. So a lot of things had to line up. This team had been a program that had been in the national tournament for a while. They hadn't been when I got there. So now it's kind of that task of getting them back. So that's kind of a cool challenge ahead. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily going, I want to be in college yet, or sure. But yeah, I'd not been an assistant. I just
Well,
had
that's cool.
coached these amateur women's programs in the summer, and that's a lot of college and former pro. So had been at a high level, but it was just like college comes with its own rules and space that can sometimes be great, and then sometimes just be a pain in the ass. I don't know if I can swear on this, but yeah.
You sure can.
Okay, great.
And so you're doing that, and then you also have a podcast too, right?
Yeah, I do a couple things. So the podcast came out of, I run a mentorship group, an organization called Fearless and Capable. And it's all about mentoring and supporting women that are working in sports, and do a lot of mentoring of athletes as well. So for me, I had amazing people helping me get to where I got to as an athlete, as a coach, and no harm to it. It was all men, which isn't bad, and they helped me be as good as I am. But at the same time, it was like, there's no one looking like me. So when I wanted to have kids or experience some sexist situations, I just only knew just get into the boys club. And I'm sarcastic. I can be vulgar. I can do everything to hang with the boys club. But I was just like, can we have representation for women that want to work in the sports industry? And so through my connections, myself and a bunch of other women helped to mentor and support. So that's where Fearless and Capable came out of.
Fearless and Capable.
Yeah. And then a girl that I coached when she was 11 years old, she ends up rowing at the University of Iowa, and she starts this clothing brand called Unbreakable Female Athlete. And it's got its own cool story behind it, but she's all on like TikTok and just doing all these sweet things and creating this brand of empowerment for female athletes in all of these different realms of sport. And so I was like, hey, I love what you're doing. It's awesome. And she's like, well, you're my coach when I was 11. And like, we've just been talking. So I was like, would you want to talk about the relationship from athlete to coach, having the fact we're in two different sports, we have some background, but just like some of the friction that happens between coaches and players, particularly in the collegiate environment, just get real about what happens and what we experience and how we can make it better. So Unbreakable and Fearless is the podcast, and it's kind of our two brands coming together to empower women in the arena of sports. But I mean, we talk about menstrual cycles. We talk about things that most coaches, I mean, particularly men who are coaching women, are like, what is this all about? Yeah. But a way to listen and get some real information about what it's really like, and hopefully try to make the sport a little bit better. So yeah, it's fun. It's interesting to talk about. Yeah.
So how long have you been doing that for?
The podcast, we're like 24 episodes in. So about a year, I think about a year and a half ago, we started it, and it's an interesting endeavor, and as you well know, to like suddenly decide I'm going to put my voice and opinions on something and hope it doesn't backfire. Yeah. Knowing that it could be my job, but like I said, if they don't want me after what I say on a podcast, they're not going to want me when I'm on the sideline in a competitive match.
So how did you get into, I guess, soccer? So it sounds like soccer's been a big part of your life
since I was 5.
Yeah.
It was because I got in trouble by my parents and got pulled out of ballet, and soccer was the only thing left when they felt bad I wasn't participating in anything. So I was apparently a naughty little girl, and they pulled me out of ballet or whatever I wanted to do, and then felt bad, and so put me into soccer, where I was the only girl on an all-boys team in the middle of Kentucky. That's where I was kind of raised for a little bit before we moved to Chicago. And then when I got to Chicago, it became what I did year round. And so got the chance to, play in high school on a varsity team as a freshman, and wasn't bad. And then got to play Division I. And so it's just been, and coaching was something I was doing since I was like 13, 14. I would do camps, or I'd coach like my little sister's team. And so it was just something I knew I'd probably go into eventually.
So where did you play D1 ball at? Or D1 soccer?
You can say ball. It works. Yeah. University of Toledo in Ohio. So when I was being recruited, Toledo's football team was like a top 25 team. And when I was a freshman in high school, one of our senior studs, he was a tight end. He went to Toledo. So I only knew Toledo based off the fact that this football player went there, and he was pretty good looking. So when they messaged me, I was like, oh, Dad, he went there. My dad's like, this is not why you're looking at it. I was like, well, I don't have a chance, but at the same time, he's there. So like I had a connection. And so, I was in the mid-major, the MAC, and it was good old Midwestern soccer, which is a lot of physicality and not a lot of beauty. And it's not that beautiful game as they all put it.
What, soccer?
In the Midwest is a lot more physical.
So why do you say that?
because like in different parts of the country, the game gets played a little bit differently. And a lot of times in the Midwest, particularly in the collegiate conferences, it is a lot more physical. I mean, it is like battle fights 1-0. There's not a lot of like beautiful passing and things. It's not like messy that we all put on. It is literally like dog out, just fight and battle.
Yeah.
So it was perfect for me.
I feel like the Midwest is like that in kind of a lot of the sports. Like
that's what I gather.
Like basketball, football, like it's like the Midwest is kind of known for being like tough.
Yeah.
Like dealing with all this stuff.
And there's like swagger from the East and the West in different ways. And then us Midwest are just like, just bring it. Like, shut up and I'll take it to the field. And that's what I loved about the conference. And had been recruited to the University of Minnesota. My dad really wanted a Big Ten daughter. He thought that would be awesome. Didn't hit with me. It was too cold.
Oh, yeah. Minnesota's, I'm sorry for everyone that lives in Minnesota. It sounds like it's snowing up there 24/7.
I was on a recruiting trip like early on and it was really cold. It was like August and I had a parka on. I was like, no, this is not going to work. I can't do it. So, I mean, I was in Chicago. I was used to cold, but I was like, this is a whole nother level. I couldn't do it. So what brought you, I guess, back to Kansas City then after Toledo? That's been an interesting road. So I played at the University of Toledo and then out of college started coaching and then met my now husband and both of us were like, we want a family college coaching. There's so much recruiting. There's so much time you spend. So we thought youth soccer would be the answer. It's not. It's still an enormous amount of stupid time that you spend on the field. So we coaching. Yeah. So we moved to Iowa. We were in Des Moines, Iowa for what we thought would be 2 or 3 years. And we were there for 10 years before we got to Kansas City in 2019. Wow. So Iowa is a different beast. Again, for those living in Iowa, I apologize. It was all right. Des Moines was okay. But we were always like, we would go back Chicago, Kansas City, or like Columbus or Cincinnati. We're always kind of on that where we could see ourselves at. We have no family in Kansas City. It was just one of those towns that we had visited so often professionally that we always liked it. We thought it was fun. We thought it was cool. We could see having a family here. And so my husband got an offer to, he is the director of coaching. So essentially he helps run the state of Kansas youth soccer. So he oversees the whole state on the youth soccer side. So he runs camps and helps with identification of the best players in Kansas to move them up to regionals. So we're kind of this little soccer couple, but he's on the youth side and then I'm more on like the senior level, older.
Yeah, so you guys are heavily involved in soccer.
We are, yeah. He played Division I as well. We both had injuries in college that like our playing careers were done. So he's a bit older than me, so he went through his coaching paths at different times. But yeah, it's been, so we get it. So like if I'm on a recruiting call or he's somewhere for it, we just get it because the other one's living it as well.
So you coach youth soccer and then, okay, you got to tell me what the Courage is.
So Casey Courage is a professional amateur women's team. So
you can't leave all your accolades out. I'm going to mention all of them.
Yeah, thank you. So we predominantly are seeing players coming. We had 2 players formerly from the NWSL, the highest level of professional women's soccer here. One was on the Casey Current, so she played with us this summer. We have players that are aspiring to play professionally, so they're working on contracts, whether it's within our country or going outside of the country, which is really common for women. If you're not going to play in the top division, you have to go over to Europe to play. And then a lot of players anywhere from like Division 3 to Division 1, but the top team that I take on predominantly is a lot of Division 1 players. So from all over the country, this is where they play to be ready for the college seasons.
So is it like, I don't want to say, is it like a minor league? Kind of?
It's right under minor league, so it's like an amateur, so we can't pay them.
Yeah.
But we give like a 12-week season. They play games. We train them 3 to 4 times a week. They work with like a sports performance on speed and agility and fitness. And essentially each of them, for most of them, are going to go on to something beyond the summer. But they use it for film. The transfer portal now in college is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, it is. Especially with the NIL deals.
All of it. So these athletes are in way different positions than most of us even ever knew about. So I had players that are in the portal. So they're trying to be recruited and using the film from games and all this kind of stuff. So you can play some very high level games. It's cool, but there's more to come in that professional pyramid for women that I'm excited to be having some positions to be involved with those. So
is that here locally?
There could be, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you just can't mention it yet? All right.
Yeah.
Dang it.
I'll come back if there's something big, but yeah.
So where the Courage play at?
So we actually, based off of the requirements of like how big a stadium you have to have and so on, there's only a handful of stadiums that really fit the bill. So we usually go between Rockhurst University. They have a really nice facility. And we usually pair that up with a couple men's amateur teams. Like there's a team out of Topeka called Sunflower and a couple others. So we'll do like back-to-back games. And then where else do we play around here? There's a new complex it's called Paragon. It's in a southern part of Kansas City, a brand new youth complex. Massive and huge, but it's got a huge stadium. So you have to have certain requirements. So we don't play only in one area. We kind of travel, which is annoying a little bit because you're having surfaces and different environments and so on. But it's women's sports at the end, so the funding is low. So you got to do with what you can.
So grass or turf?
Predominantly turf.
Which one would you?
I would prefer grass all day because if you slide on turf, it is it's going to be painful that day. And and like the girls, the cherries they'll have on their hips and going up into their butt is bad. It's bad, and they have to do. I mean, it's a requirement of the game that they do it. So grass every day. You slide so much better. Slide so much better.
I said the same thing when I was playing football.
I bet
grass is so much better.
Yeah, but I told my players I never played on turf. I coached on turf, but I've never played on turf as an actual player. I was always grass. So they don't know like the mud pits. Remember those where you just came out and like you don't even know what color jersey anybody had on? They don't know. I know
when I was playing freshman ball or freshman initiation, which is I don't think they even do that anymore.
That can get you in a whole lot of trouble.
Hazing. So back in the day when I was playing, they had this big mud pit and they, put water on it and some urinated in it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And then we had to just kind of swim through it. And that was our initiation. And then this is before practice. And then we had to practice. And then the coach got so upset that he was like, I can't believe you made these guys do it. So their punishment was to tackle us to get dirty, which was they were already mad. And so we're getting hit by seniors that were pissed off. Yeah. Just to get them dirty. I was like, this is more punishment for us.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember like a 1v1 activity and I slid tackled. I was a freshman and slid tackled the senior and it's wet. And so it was a great tackle. Like water flies up. I get the ball, go score. And she comes back the next time and smashes me into the water and is like, know your position, freshman. And I was like,
oh, my bad.
I'll tackle everybody but you next.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. But yeah, it is. It's that, and that's what some of it now. I get the hazing. It can't happen for so many reasons. It was for people that screwed it up, but
I think hazing was okay until people screwed it up.
Correct. Yeah, there was always that kind of initiation.
Like the light hazing was fine until people were abusing people.
Correct. Yeah. When you're starving them and doing things that are risking their health. But it is, and I think that's some of the sports culture that you miss, and you kind of you hope in ways it can find itself. And I know for me, I try to absolutely no hazing, but there'll be things during the beginning of the season that'll be like, this is kind of what we do. Like the players did this. It was awesome, actually. I was kind of jealous and wanted to be on it. So my team this fall, it was called Sniper, and all the girls had mini Nerf water guns.
Called Sniper?
Called Sniper, and they had pairs, and their and their partner had targets. And so everyone knew who the target was, or you knew who your target was, but nobody else did. And it was, you had to have recorded proof that you got them with water. So the girls were waiting for players to come out of the weight room, coming out of the athletic training, coming out of the cafeteria, and they would be around the corner and come out and shoot them with water while the other one's videotaping it. It was kind of cool. So that was kind of the hazing, is that the freshmen kind of had to deal with the fact that they were off in the target. Of a light water gun. And I'm like, oh God. And so I'm like, okay, mini water guns, make sure it doesn't look like
someone didn't get hit.
I'm just sitting there. I'm like, it doesn't go by the computers. Don't have a teacher come at me. So but it was cool. I thought that was managed well in a way to make it fun and introductory, but a little bit of competitiveness.
So I can tell you're very passionate about coaching. Mm-hmm. So where did that fire come from?
I think in a lot of ways, I come from a pretty loud and competitive family. That was kind of always part of it. Whether I liked it or not, I've typically found myself in a leadership captain role. I started playing a lot as a defender, like a central defender, which asks you to talk a lot and organize a lot. Or at least that's what the coaches demanded out of me. And I naturally have a very loud voice. It's unfortunate and fortunate. I think my kids probably say it's unfortunate. And maybe the neighbors once in a while can hear me, but that's what it is.
I can't hear you down the
Well, that's good. You're far enough away that you're not hearing anything. Yeah, those side neighbors might be a little concerned. But it was just something that I had some really good coaches. I had some really terrible people as coaches, but at the end of the day, for me, I enjoy teaching. I enjoy getting players in a position to win. Like, I know as a coach, I can't make that result happen, but I can influence it. I like to tactically move pieces around and mess with the opponent so they don't know what I've done or they have to take time. That's always a really enjoyable piece when you look at the coach who's just baffled on what to do next. Like, that's one of my favorite things is when they go silent and they're like, what the hell do I do? Because I can't figure out what you've done. So that's my favorite is when that is a little bit messed up. And soccer being a little bit more fluid, like in football, you guys, you line up and there's all this movement, but like soccer is so fluid. I can just change things more on the go, and there's not a time where we're going to be in like a shape that they can see. It's oftentimes they've got to figure out what we've done. And so my players are pretty accustomed to it, and I try to make them excited about it so that it's all about winning. I love winning.
So what is it like, I guess, coaching in the collegiate level?
It's enjoyable in the fact that you get to spend a lot of time kind of helping these kids. I mean, they're kids, but they're young adults, kind of figure out the next parts of their life, which has its ups and downs as well. There's some late night phone calls. If my phone rings at 1:00 in the morning and I'm like, oh God, what am I going to call for right now? Or it might not even be the player calling me. It might be somebody else. And I'm going, oh no.
We found your player.
Exactly.
Like, oh no.
So, those are the things. But I think at the end of the day, what I love is the fact that you come into a preseason, and just like football and volleyball are the other predominant fall sports, like you don't have a time to get accustomed to things. Like you get in and you go, and there's something about just the urgency to get them performing at a high level, and that challenge of like sink or swim, like whatever ideas you have, you've got to get them going. Because if you take too long to get the team playing in a way you want to, it's going to fail you. And if they don't buy into it, it's going to fail you. And so there's just this really fun challenge of getting everything to come together. And it can be extremely anxiety ridden in a lot of ways. But there's some losses. I don't take losses really well.
I don't take losses. I even don't take losses for the Chiefs game. So I could imagine coaching.
I do have an hour drive home. That helps. So by the time I get home, my steam is usually a little bit more off me so that I can be mom and be a bit more present.
Yeah, it takes me like a full week to get over losses. So there's like no way in the world. Like when I was even coaching like youth, and I'm talking about like kindergarten, first grade, like basketball, I did kindergarten girls and first grade boys. Whew.
Yeah, that's a beast. That's
even
hard.
Like when we lost then, I'm just like, I can't believe we lost this damn game. And my wife's just like, hey, they're in kindergarten.
My husband usually goes, take a lap. And I have to walk. I'll take the longest route possible to get back to the car because the same. I've been
competitive nature.
Yeah, it's just why can't they just get it? And I'm really good. It probably shouldn't be this way, but if I give a tactic or something at halftime and then we end up scoring the way I say it, I look and I go, as a reminder, I'm not an idiot. And I told you to do this.
I know what I'm talking
about.
And
it worked. So let's just all like take a second to recognize that you should just listen to me. And I would love to say that to my daughter's 8-year-old team sometimes, and I've said it in more ways than that, but yeah, it is.
So do you coach that team too?
No, I stopped.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit different coaching your own kids.
I tried. It's better off that I don't.
So you're probably not going to say this about yourself, but I'll say it about yourself. You are like an ambassador in women's sports here in Kansas City and probably around the country. And I know that you've dealt with a lot. A lot of people probably don't know your story.
Yeah.
And I know you dealt with a lot in Toledo, and you were a big voice of, women empowerment and like, hey, like standing up to things that were wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I guess kind of, we don't have to talk about the whole incident, but if you want to, we can, but like go through that and like what you felt during that whole time.
Yeah. So, I played every minute of my freshman season. So I come in as a freshman, make a big impact. I'm playing every minute, but I'm in so much pain. My back is killing me. So at the end of my freshman season, they find a stress fracture in my back, but they determine it's old by a bone scan or whatever they did. And so essentially you're just going to be in pain. You got to figure out, you got to manage it. I'm like, awesome. So I spent the rest of my collegiate career basically on ice, in the training room, getting shots, wearing braces, doing all this stuff just to play soccer. And I was like, this is fun, but like not that much fun anymore because it's just painful. So I redshirted my sophomore year where they tried to kind of do a lot of different things. I gained the freshman 15. I say
freshman 20.
Freshman 20. And my coach didn't really like it because I eventually got myself back into shape. And he was like, well, you could have lost a bit more. And I said, I kept 5 from the memories. I need to know.
I like that.
I added a couple other things after that, but we'll just say I said I kept 5 from the memories because I had a good time. I mean, it's college, and so I am at a point where in that redshirted year, he starts talking to me about some of the coaching stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm interested, and so there was a little bit of rapport to maybe coaching and him helping me with that part. So fast forward my last year, which was my true senior year, but redshirted junior year, our team wins the conference for the first time. It goes to the NCAAs for the very first time in the entire school's history. We were actually doing that. And the NCAAs is a whole different deal. Like to get into that tournament, to be, in the show where you see your name come up and, we're going to Penn State, and I'm just like, this is a whole nother game.
Yeah.
But I know that it's going to come to an end real fast. Like I can't keep doing this. So we end up getting to a situation where the doctors are agreeing that I need to medically retire. My coach is not happy. I'm going to medically retire. But I'm like, I can't, like, I don't have a life right now. I'm in just that much pain. And so, okay, we get over that hump. I'm medically retired. What do you want to do? And coaching was an option. And so he provided me an offer to come on because he had already hired the assistant coaches. So there wasn't a paid position, but he connected me to a youth club and said, she was good. So he's helping me get that job. And then he goes, you can be our volunteer assistant. So I was like, all right. So
this is all after your sophomore year.
This is after my senior year. Fast forward a little bit. So I've played, it's all determined. I'm not going to play anymore. I'm going to go to coaching. I do my basic coaching license, which coaching in U.S. soccer has licenses that go from like a D to an A. So I do my first one, my D. I do really well in it. And I am offered from him to coach at the university I played for under him. At the same time, I have an offer to go be a grad assistant at another school. And I'm trying to decide what I do. And so I make the decision, you know what? He's invested all this time and energy in me. He literally ran our program with fear and manipulation. I know this as an adult, but knowing it back then was just like, this is D1 sports, right?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be scared all the time. You're supposed to be, lack of a better term, an asshole to me at every moment of every turn. I'm never supposed to know if I'm doing anything right. I could be kicked off at any point, all that stuff. So that's how we ran, but I didn't know anything different. So I was just like, oh yeah, that's how D1 sports are going. I'm competitive. Maybe this is the route. So what happens to me is I go to a dinner to tell him that I am going to stay at the university and coach with him, and I'll be the volunteer assistant. And at the restaurant, it's him, his wife, and a teammate of mine who had already accepted one of the paid assistant jobs. So I'm there with what I think is like a very safe space. I had come from coaching youth, so I was sweaty. I literally had like a t-shirt and shorts on and was gross. And I say I'm going to stay. There's like big celebration. We're all excited. And I decide I'm going to walk to the bathroom because his wife and my teammate and now assistant were there. And I'm going to the bathroom and I feel a pull and I'm pulled into a coat closet and my coach sexually assaults me. And essentially what I now know it to be, and I did not know at the time, is he raped me based off what he did to me. And so that was my entry. Like, hi, I'll coach and I'll stay on. And by the way, that's what you do to me. So, it was, I pushed him off. I did physically like push him, and I ran to the bathroom, and, I remember very little. It's all very hazy on what kind of happened afterwards. But essentially, I didn't want to call any teammates because I was afraid. And his wife was there, and his wife was knocking on the bathroom door being like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I couldn't say anything. So I called an ex-boyfriend who came and picked me up. And what I remember most is I was just spitting. And I just couldn't talk about it. So, kind of afterwards, I say something to the assistant that was there. I said, this is what he did to me. And she goes, were you flirting with him? Did you? And I was like, dude, I don't know. Like, he's our coach.
Who was saying that to you?
My former teammate.
Gotcha.
And at this point now, she's come to kind of realize that probably wasn't the best thing to say to me, because
sorry, I'm like having my detective boots on right
exactly.
now.
No, and it was one of those things very real that like I try to talk a lot about what do you say when somebody says something to you like that, because you don't know. I mean, if the situation had been reversed, I hope I would say something different.
Yeah.
But it did. It made me automatically like victim shame myself and question everything I had done to bring that on. And so he goes away for a couple weeks, and I'm kind of just like sitting with it. And he then invites me back out, and I feel like I'm going to go in, I'm going to be safe. I'm not going to drink, but like, I'm going to do this job. I need this job. And I haven't told my parents, I haven't told anybody, but I'm like, I committed to the job. What am I going to do now? And by the way, we had just gone to the NCAAs. He was coach of the year. Like, he was loved by the university. Like, I'm going to go in and accuse him of this. Like, I'm sorry, but back in 2006, that was not going to go my way.
Yeah, back then it was not like a...
No, it was going to go, you can go, you can leave. So I go to this, it was more of like a dinner thing or whatever. And he approaches me and he goes, "Did I kiss you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I was like, "You were drunk. Let's just forget it." And then the night goes on. I'm like really careful about how much I'm consuming. I just don't trust it. I'm just but he apologized. So maybe it was an innocent mistake, whatever. And we end up all going back to his house, and I'm sober, so I can leave, and I'm preparing to leave, and I go to the bathroom. And when I come out of the bathroom, he's back at the bathroom door with his arm across it and trying to push me back into the bathroom. So I have to push him off again and run out the door. And basically, I coached that season. Players now that know the story were like, "You were radically different," because they had played with me the year before, and now they saw me.
Well, you got a predator that you have to coach with. That's very tough.
And he's calling me into the office, telling me I have an attitude, that I ended up on our first away trip, like essentially having a panic attack because I was afraid of what he was going to do to me on away trips. And we were in San Diego. So after that trip, I was like, I have to work, so I can't go when you guys go away, just to try to limit any time that he could have access to me. And we won the championship again. He did not give me a championship ring that season, told me I didn't earn the championship ring. When I went to the post-tournament games, he asked me on the bus, "Why are you here?" When I would have my former teammates and now players that I'm coaching ask me questions like about the game or anything, he would literally step in front of me and go, "You don't talk to her." Like, it was weird. I'm like, why am I even doing this? But in my head, I needed him for the next job. I needed to do this to get to the next collegiate job. But by time I was done with that fall season and all the stuff he had done and everything, I was like, I'm out. Like, collegiate's not for me. If this is what it's going to be, and I don't know, I don't want him being my letter of recommendation. So I need to go start all over again and find my space. So, I mean, it took, and I didn't tell anybody for a really long time. And then kind of fast forward to the last couple of years, I started kind of putting out, and honestly, it kind of came around when the Donald Trump comment of the pussy comment came up. I don't know if you could probably beat that out, but that was kind of the time that it was like, well, that's just locker room. And I was like, no, but that can extend into really bad things when it's not, not in a good hands. So long story short, I started publicly saying that. And then, it was right after I got hired from Ottawa. I was on this panel for women coaches, and there was this question about reclaiming the game. And I said, well, I mentor women who coach, and that's partially to have a female safe role model because my coach sexually assaulted me. Boom. That was all I said. And people were like, oh, but moved on. But what was on that call I did not know was a reporter from The Guardian. And it's primarily based out of the UK, but they do a lot of coverage of the sport. And so...
Which they had a great article, by the way.
Yeah, and he did a very good job. And he's done a lot of reporting, particularly in women's soccer, about similar subjects. But I get this email like 2.5 weeks after this webinar. Hey, I heard you on this. I've looked you up. I believe you. Do you want to tell your story publicly? And I was like, oh, what?
So was that like the first time that you said anything out loud? I
had leaked it and like had told people, had mentioned it in very brief, like not the details of the story. And so it was for a lot of people, I was really starting to kind of come to my voice and being like, no, that something happened to me. And of course, like teammates of Toledo and all that were weird. Like, honestly, they were like, I don't know what to say. And I'm like, because I'm not being really forward about what actually happened. I'm just like, yeah, don't go drinking with him. He's not a good person. And the reporter calls and, we're talking about this. And I said, well, I have heard there are other women. I've heard there are other women. And I guess I should back up. So before all this happens, in 2014, this is part of it. In 2014, this is where I start finding myself. Sorry. 2014, my husband gets a call, not me. My husband gets a call from a guy that's in the Toledo area who was an assistant to this head coach. And he said, listen, he's been doing some bad stuff to players. I heard through the grapevine Candice might have been a victim. And so my husband's like, listen, it's my wife's story. If she'll talk to you, she'll call you, whatever. Kind of ends it there. And so I call the guy and I'm like, well, what's up? And so he's telling me that Brad has been essentially sexually assaulting these assistant coaches that were previous players or young women just out of college coaching or just starting their college coaching. So what I did is I wrote an email to the athletic director and I said, information I should have told you. And she was my senior women's athletic administrator, so she knew who I was. I wrote everything out, said this is everything that happened to me, and then Brad resigned 2 weeks after that. He got to resign saying there was inappropriate relationships and that he was working on himself, but he was inappropriate relationships. So when this article is being proposed to me, I said, one, I told them in 2014. I told Toledo in 2014 what he did to me, and he got to resign on inappropriate relationships. There was no relationship with me, at least.
You got to resign years later.
Yes. And then I said, I've heard there's other women. So he goes, do you think any of them will talk? And I'm like, I don't really know a lot of these women. So I basically cold called and like, hi, would you like to talk to me about the worst moment in your life? I had another bad moment. So let's see if we can get, so we have 5 women on record. There are more, I know, at this point in time, but it took, a lot of bravery, a lot of, finding out about what had happened to other women when you know your own story, but to know it happened before me and it happened after me. So that whole feeling like, well, it was my fault if I had stopped it. The reality is he had done it long before. He continued long after me. But yeah, to hear and know, and then to have all of us kind of tell our stories and see the predatory behavior. Yeah. When you think about how much time you spend as a head coach with these athletes, we were there an hour and a half before practice started, 2 hours for practice, usually an hour afterwards, on the road, how much time you spend with them. This is a father figure. There's no other way to describe it. I saw him more than my dad. Yeah. And the trust of what he's going to do to help and all that. Just completely, he definitely preyed on us. A lot of us had family things that were going on. My parents were divorcing. He really targeted a lot of us after our breakup. So I had just broken up with my boyfriend when he did it to me a week after that. It was scary once we saw the trends of how predatory he actually was. And to put all that together, one was a relief that it was never about me, because that's a huge piece of it. You keep thinking you did something, but it wasn't that. And I did finally go and file a police report before everything came to light in the article, but I was, fearful to go to the cops because he had a good relationship. The police department at Toledo, they would be at practices and games, and and I'm just like, oh my God, who's going to believe me? And so, I finally went through that process, which was its own ordeal. The first detective I talked to was like, you have to come all the way to Toledo. And I was like, well, I mean, we just went through COVID. Can't you just go Zoom and I can tell you? And luckily his partner called and was like, hey, I heard you talk to my, whatever tomorrow. And do you want to tell me? And I told him, he said, I have to come to Toledo and I live in Kansas City. He's like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
So that was the thing is like, you kind of go like, there was, and it's not just the police. Like I reported to who I was supposed to report to in 2018. I told the university in 2014. Nothing got done until I took it to public press.
Yeah.
Nothing got done. Finally this year, so this past August 23, the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, it governs any sport essentially that participates in the Olympics. It does not have any governance over the NCAA. Mm-hmm. So Brad has at this point been permanently ineligible to coach essentially any Olympic sport, but he could go into college coaching, and this ineligibility status doesn't follow into college because the NCAA and them are two separate entities. So you have some of that.
Hopefully someone's not as, or like, hopefully
you would hope.
Hires.
Right. But, you go into those situations, and I asked that to the Center for Safe Sport. How do we know if he gets another job?
Yeah.
And they told me set a Google alert. And I said, you know what I want? To be sitting at dinner with my family and getting a Google alert. And he goes, well, maybe we do that. I go, maybe you do.
Yeah.
That might be your guys' job more than my job to be stalking. Because I'm good not having any contact. But yeah, so he's been out for it. So yeah, I mean, it has been, unfortunately, we found more women. But the articles that were written were really well written. The gentleman did a fantastic job in representing all the stories and things that had happened. And it did. I mean, U.S. Soccer responded very quickly because he was involved in levels of U.S. Soccer that are really important. He was actively teaching coaching courses when this happened. And so had to get pulled out of coaching course. Like it was just,
that's crazy.
His world had to turn upside down and rightfully so, and needed to. And so, yeah, I mean, haven't spoken to him, never received any correspondence. He didn't fight anything. He didn't really comment, but he didn't necessarily say.
Didn't admit guilt.
No, didn't admit guilt, but didn't fight it at all. So that kind of helped us because that's always a concern when you go public like this. What's going to be the ramifications? And I've looked at every legal avenue I can. And, Ohio is not the most victim-friendly state when it comes down to the statutes and laws. So not quite the place you want to have that happen because they're not really going to open that door. But it is what it is. I mean, for me, I'm just a huge advocate of how can, one, we create safe spaces, and two, when things happen, like it is terrible to report. I hate it's really, and that side and in your experiences, it's tough, and you're going to have to go through really, really bad details. And I remember anytime I did the details, I made my house clear out. Like I had them take my husband out, kids out. I didn't want an echo heard of when I have to go into the details of what happened because it is scary.
I always thought it was really hard because for those of you who don't know, I used to be a detective. Yeah. And when I would interview people that went through that, I found it hard for me to even because I can't, I don't know how that world is to being a female and being, having that happen. So I found it always tough for me to asking questions to a female about like a rape or an assault that happened. Yeah. And then I'm just like, God, I can't relate. So it's just like, I don't want to seem like I don't care, but I do care, but I don't want them to think that like I don't want to talk to this guy because he doesn't know what I'm talking about. Right. And so I always tried to make someone feel comfortable, which is hard. Yeah. When
they're really uncomfortable.
When they're really uncomfortable, especially talking about it to a man that they don't know. Yeah. So,
it's levels.
I'm glad that you actually got it off your chest and were able to fight it, which is awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing much more I can really do besides being like this is still happening. Because I speak out, I get people that reach out all the time, and there's things going on constantly. And it's unfortunate that what seems like something that at this point happened, we're 17 years ago is still happening pretty regularly. And sports is an interesting world because it's so competitive and we love narcissism, right? Narcissism is what makes our best athletes but when they use it for the power of good and put it into their sport and, what can make things better. But when they use it to manipulate environments where they use their power positions to really harm others, that's when things go really south. But it is hard because sports is a whole different realm where coach is coach.
Yeah.
And you don't want to question it.
So how do you use what happened to you now in coaching and like, I guess, like trying to now like talk to your players and making them better people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's all about. If you're coaching, you're really trying to make better people.
Yeah, no, 100%, because, they might be coaching my kids someday,
Yeah, exactly.
And you want them to be good people. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I'm way more open about a lot of subjects because I think I always phrased it the first day you arrived on campus before you went through hell of 2 days, you signed your life away. Listen, I'm not going to do drugs, I'm not going to drink, and I'm not going to get pregnant. That was like the only thing I remember from those signing days of compliance is don't get pregnant because it creates a lot of havoc for everybody if you get pregnant. You do drugs, you're going to get drug tested, you're going to have a lot of issues. And if you're going to drink, don't be an idiot. Like those were basically the messages. There was nothing, and keep your grades up. But if there was nothing like, hey, if you experience this is what you do. Or if you feel like your coach is behaving poorly and not treating you well in any way, shape, or form, here's an avenue you can go to. Like, there was none of that. It was just obey and don't get out of line. And so for me, putting out the Title IX coordinator in front of our athletes, putting the counselors out in front of the athletes, I reiterate all the time, I am not God. I do not know everything.
Yeah.
I know soccer pretty damn well. Not great, but pretty well. But I don't know anything about like mental health. I have it. I know it. I have these things. I'm not your psychologist. I'm not your therapist. I'm not going to serve those roles, but I can get you to people. And so I do those things. I talk openly about mental health. I talk openly about the real life reasons for having a voice and finding your voice. And even if, not everybody needs to go put a newspaper article out about what happens to them, but like if I had reported, I know that the realities are that my situation may have been no different. Nobody would have done anything, but it would have created the record. And that's the thing I keep talking about is when somebody does something, unfortunately, you might not see the justice, and that sucks. That's terrible to know. But if you can create the record by putting it like, I should have gone to the police. I should have gone there because even if they didn't believe me, there could have been a record.
Yep.
Right. And so Safe Sport, there's a lot of conversations whether the Safe Sport acts work. Does it actually work to make this country better? Well, if they do or they don't, we still got to report it, because if we don't report it, then we can't prove it doesn't work, because if they don't have the information, we can't prove. So you've got to report. And eventually, I'm a firm believer, these people that are predators will be found out when we have enough data. Because that was one of the things that, a state prosecutor was, well, if you have 10 victims, then we could probably pursue something. So I was like, well, 7 of us aren't enough.
Jeez.
But these are the real things that you're sitting there going, oh my God, I don't really want to have to go find 3 more people.
Yeah.
And I don't,
it's not like that here.
Right. Exactly. These are different states. And so then even understanding the laws of all of it. So that's for me. It's just like, how do I help players see that you can come out on the other side okay? I think that's the biggest thing is like, I'm not perfect. I have so much I do not well in my life. But at the same time, like you can go through some really terrible stuff and still be okay on the end. And I still love the game. I mean, I think that's the part that I'm so happy.
I'm glad that didn't take the love for the game out.
It did for a while. It really did, because everything
I'm glad it's back.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I do, because now I really call it out when I see it. So, yeah. So,
I mean, I think to me, I think the one of the toughest things, which I'm glad that you're kind of there, like being an ambassador for women's sports and dealing with that stuff, is I feel like a lot of people that go through that, like, feel like they don't have a voice. Like, they can't talk about it because of what you said of, like, no one's going to listen. And even when you do report it, no one still listens. So it just kind of reiterates, like, why did I even say anything?
Yeah.
So I think that when you are a big, like, hey, like, we got to report this if something happens, I think that helps giving, people a voice, which is huge, because that's what helps eventually will, stop it.
There's good people out there. And I think that's the part when like you have stuff like that go down, you have a lot of distrust. But for me, it took a while to find somebody that would be an advocate. I talked to the guy today that was the first one to be like, hey, do you know you could report here? And I was like, I didn't even know that was an option to me. And I was like, but I was an adult. They're like, it doesn't matter. And I think that's the part too, is like, it's not a coach athlete thing. A lot of times it's coach and staff, like people of positions of power, like they have an opportunity and they have a lot that they can hold over your head. And when you feel trapped, to keep thinking that someone controls your destiny is absolute BS. Like,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. Nobody can control it. Like, they genuinely can't. And when I got open and honest about what happened to me, like, there's another level of me that switched on that was just more intentional with everything I did. But it's not easy. I mean, there are days that, like, I was crying and mad. My kids, I had to tell my kids that this article was coming
tough.
out.
Yeah.
My son's actually, I think both kids have pulled it up at school, and I'm like, not the article to share about mommy, maybe it's
My mom is a celebrity.
Yeah, exactly. My son says intermediately famous is what he says. But yeah, I'm like, maybe not the article to pull up in the middle of the day. Be like, this is my mom. But I mean, it had to come out. Like, they had to see the tears, and my son's 13. He understands what kind of happened, and he's
13.
Yes.
Sorry, I know who he is.
Yeah, he's a first degree black belt, and so he goes, Mom, there's only two people I want to punch in this world, and one I shouldn't say, but the other one he goes is Brad. The one he goes, if I saw him, and I was like, well, thank you, buddy. Like,
he's got your back.
He does. He's got my back, and I mean, some of the stuff he's doing right now is intense. So
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
it's fair enough. But it's those situations where it impacts a lot of people. I mean, my husband's had to know about it, and I mean, to be frank and honest, he knew the most, and he still didn't know everything until he read the article.
Yeah.
And that part was hard to know. And he got interviewed, and it wasn't obviously in the articles, but he got interviewed for kind of what he knew and what he's had to see me go through, and the highs and the lows of having to be that partner, to see me just upset and pissed. And, when it came out, when he resigned, that this was an inappropriate relationship. And I'm like, there's no relationship to this. But then going, well, do you want to talk about it? Do you not? And trying to let me take the lead. Like, that's not an easy thing, because he can't go tell my story for me. I have to go do it. But to be that supportive partner when somebody's just crumbling is not an easy position to be in. And he's a pretty nice guy. And, when he wants to go wreck somebody, that's a hard thing to know he's going to go. So he's done a good job in that space too. But, my parents had to read that.
Yeah, you got to be vulnerable to have that whole story going out. You're vulnerable to the whole world.
I had to give a lot of heads up, And I have some sisters that are pretty good at social media, like sleuthing. So they were all over. I didn't access my social media. I kind of I made a post and then I stopped. But it was cool when they're like, Sports Illustrated just like retweeted you and like put it out. And I was like,
that's awesome.
That's cool. And then apparently I was trending in. I have a coach friend that he was back home in Ghana, and he's like, you're trending in Ghana. And I was like, I'm what? He's
I'm
like,
worldwide famous,
so
not for what I want to be famous for.
Cool. Exactly. So, I mean, that was cool when I was getting some messages like from people all over the world being like, I read that and seeing that. So, I mean, there was some parts of like feeling, because you just don't know. You just don't know what the response is going to be, if people are going to flip out or what's going to happen, if people are going to offend them, all that. So, no, it's been a lot better coming out on the other side, and I hope I can be that part of like, it sucks to go through, but like, you have good people, and there are good people, and there are people that will take your side, and they will help you navigate the difficulties of reporting. And what if you get somebody that doesn't believe you? Like, go to the next person. Like, I'm so happy that second detective called me, because like that changed a lot of perceptions when people struggle to report. And I'm like, the first guy was like, oh, you have to do all this, and the next guy was like, no, you don't, and was so good at understanding like some of the things you said, like reminded me of that conversation where he made me feel comfortable.
It's the biggest thing.
And I remember they were asking me for like identifiers, and I said he had this bird nose. I just remember this and he was like, that's an awesome detail. It just made me feel good, like validating it, like coaching me up of like, no, that's a good detail to remember about.
I know when I was told when I was a detective and like going to trainings and having to have uncomfortable talks with people, like they always told me like you are reliving the worst event most likely with someone. Yeah. So you have to be vulnerable with them.
You do.
Like you have to understand what they're going through.
He changed it. He changed it
for me. Yeah, it's not easy. Just like, tell me about the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Right.
Let's go.
Go. Yeah. And begin. Yeah, no, you do.
And then I have to write all this down, and I got to make sure that it's believable.
Yeah, and you have to ask me to reconfirm details. Yeah. And that was that article was like, okay, give me the restaurant. Tell me what the restaurant looked like. And I'm like, here's where it was. And then it was the one, like I had to go online and verify. I mean, this story was double checking all my details. And I mean, the proof was at the end of the day, Toledo said they never got an article from me or an email from me saying what happened. And we had proof of them responding to my article.
Yeah, I saw that in the article, which is...
And they now we know that they knew about all 5 of us from the article when I sent the email, because I have a thing that says they knew about all 5 of us and worried about Title IX complaints and so on. But
boy,
Toledo won't answer my emails.
I wonder why. Hey, Toledo, answer emails.
So, yeah, but no.
All right. So, I guess my next question would be, like, dealing with everything you dealt with, what would be your message to someone that was going through something similar? Not like maybe it had to be not exactly what you were going through, but maybe like if they feel like they don't have a voice, like what would be your message to them? Like, this is to anyone listening.
No, I think one, there are people that will listen, reach out to me, and if I don't know somebody, I'll find somebody. Like, I think that was the biggest thing, is when I felt heard, that changed everything. 2, get therapy. The people that love you the most are not your therapist.
You ain't kidding. I go see therapy. I went to see my therapist yesterday. Yeah.
Get it? And I waited way too long. I've waited way too long. And it's nice to be in a space where, because what you're saying to a loved one is going to impact them. It impacts the therapist, but they're doing it in a way to help you. And so that changes. So get therapy. There are connection and groups out there. Some are good, some are not so good. I found advocacy groups that I was like, I just don't align with what you guys are throwing out here, but you guys do you, and I'll do me, and find spaces. But, for me, it's just start somewhere by talking to someone, because the sooner you can start talking to someone, actually, the better off you're going to be. Yeah. The more I held it in, the worse it got. Yeah. And that's true about a lot of things, but the freedom to feel and know that it's never your fault, I think, is the biggest thing. Is I took so long to get to that point where I didn't blame myself. And when I did, is like when the badassness kind of released. And that feels really good to have that part done. And, sometimes there's going to be justice and sometimes not. It felt like a really long, excruciating process to get any justice. But at some point it does come and be part of the record keeping. So yeah, there's places to go, but just start talking to somebody. I'll talk to anybody about it and try to do whatever I can to give them space to talk and share. Because when somebody's opening up about that, the best things you can tell them is, I'm sorry and I believe you.
Yep.
It's, if you know nothing else, I'm sorry and I believe you. And that can do a whole lot of good from the opening. So yeah.
Well, I'm just your neighbor and new friend, and I'm just saying I'm proud of you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate you, and I feel like I'm honored to even have you tell a story.
Thanks.
So
I
thank you.
It. Yeah, no,
I really do appreciate it.
No, thanks.
I want to say that you definitely have people in your corner.
I do.
And so
it was nice the first time after the article, when I came out, I think, to one of the driveways, and all the women were kind of like, we're so proud of you. And I was like, I don't know you all that well, but thanks. Okay. Yeah, I was kind of awkward. Like, hi, I'm your neighbor, and there's going to be an article, and this is it. But no, I really appreciate it, and I think that's what more people need to realize, is that it's not isolated. When you talk, a lot of people get really proud of what you've done. So, yeah, thank you. All right.
So before we wrap this up, do you want to give a shout out on your social platforms or anybody?
The Fearless and Capable would be the place I'd love for people to come visit. It's Fearless and Capable on Instagram, on TikTok.
Check out our podcast, too.
Check out the podcast, too, and that's Unbreakable and Fearless. And so no social handles to just the podcast yet, except it's on YouTube as Unbreakable and Fearless. So, and wherever you find your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. But yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Again, check out Cigar Lounge. This is the coolest.
Yeah,
it is really, really cool.
I appreciate that.
No, thank you for the invite, and excited to bring my dad here.
Yeah, we'll have to bring him here.
Dad, we got a new place to visit.
Yeah,
so that'll be cool. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. It's been my honor to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate
it. Thank you guys, everybody, for listening. Tune in next week. Please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. Strawberry Hill Podcast, and we are out.
Goodbye, everybody.